Have you ever been so triggered of a certain element of fiction that you just ban the entire thing? We have a writer from ABC, always broadcasting crap. Thanks, Mark Dice. Whose virtue signaling levels are almost borderline insanity.
No more Game of Thrones. Why I ban TV shows featuring violence against women. All I want is to get through an evening without witnessing a woman being raped or murdered.
It's not only a virtue signal, but also, please make fiction a safe space for everybody. This is gonna be absolutely fucking hilarious. So, let's sit back, have a popcorn. We're gonna enjoy ourselves some triggering.
This is more difficult than it seems, however, when almost every popular television show involves violence against women. Dead and brutalized women can be found with increasing regularity in our entertainment, and there appears to be no sign of relief.
I feel so bad for you, ma'am. I feel so bad for you. There's a very good anime called Madoka Magica. Don't worry, it's kind of like Sailor Moon. It has fairies and cute girls, and it's just 12 episodes. It won't be something that you'll lose your head over.
In a typical episode of HBO's famously violent Game of Thrones, for example, several people will be murdered, and quite often, a woman will be raped. In its 60 episodes to date, there have been 133 named character deaths and 50 rapes. One tally estimates total deaths at 5,348. We watch this stuff blindly. It's part of our daily life. It is how we relax, connect with friends and partners, unwind before bed. But it's become too much for me.
Ma'am, you need to be aware that women being killed on TV is a part of a larger plot. People don't go to TVs to just see women getting killed. People go to TVs to see stories, which might or might not involve women getting killed.
As I settled in to watch season 2 of British crime drama Luther, I realized that almost every episode I'd watched until then centered around the murder of a woman, and it was leaving me feeling angry, anxious, and exhausted.
Because Luther is a crime drama, ma'am, and crime dramas will involve murder, and those murders will involve women. I don't know why you even bother watching Luther in the first place. No, seriously, why do you even watch these shows in the first place if those things aren't for you?
So, I simply switch it off.
Thankfully, we have a very quick article, so thank you so much for watching. This is just the beginning.
For the past 6 months, I have refused to watch any film or television show that features violence against women.
Okay, how do you know if those certain TV shows don't feature violence against women?
I've had to research everything I've watched. I've read about shows before watching them, paid attention to ratings and warnings, and asked family and friends to pre-watch shows I'm not sure about.
Do you have some form of a PTSD on being violently beaten or something? How affected does these TV shows can get to you? I mean, Jesus Christ.
This hasn't been easy. Stories about the forthcoming 7th season of Game of Thrones have dominated entertainment news in recent weeks, as fans eagerly await announcements about new characters and plot lines.
Oh no! People are clinging to popular TV shows with intriguing stories that contain violence. Absolutely horrible people.
I understand the hype and have wrestled with the questions of whether I lift my ban to join in. After all, I've watched every episode so far.
What? You watched every episode of Game of Thrones and you complain about violence against women just now?
Despite the horrific treatment of its female characters, it is a complex story about politics and people which could not be more relevant in our current climate. But for me, it is no longer enough to outweigh the impacts of consuming, on a regular basis, footage of women being battered.
And those politics, ma'am, would include violence towards women. Expecting women to not receive violence in Game of Thrones is like expecting things not to catch fire when near lava. Do you expect women to not receive violence on fiction or something? Oh, you mean to expect women to receive less violence in fiction? Yeah, there's a place for that. It's called Disney Junior.
What about male violence?
Oh, good question, ma'am. I haven't even gone on that part, but glad you asked it yourself.
Of course, male characters also experience high levels of violence in television shows like Game of Thrones. The difference, though, is that men are often victims of violence because they chose to put themselves in violent situations.
That's right. Men receive violence because all of them, in Game of Thrones, they put themselves in that situation. Women They never put themselves in violent situations in Game of Thrones. That never happens, ever. Lady, you just moved your goalpost to the dark side of Mars.
There is more agency in male-to-male violence, said Susan Howard Bell, director of the Sydney School of Education and Social Work at the University of Sydney. As in, violence should have more consent.
Ma'am, do you know how violence works? If you live in the Game of Thrones universe, you're gonna get stabbed in the back anyway, regardless of whether or not you want it. And this happens to all characters, not just women.
Usually, she says, male-male violence occurs between two men who both have power and agency, who are enacting violence to achieve some end.
And I say usually because when you give thousands upon thousands of examples on women doing the exact same thing, we just say, oh, not all, just usually, just in general. It's a really good word to hide how fucking disingenuous I am.
Violence against women, on the other hand, is often used as an episodic, gratuitous part of a plot, thrown in because it is expected, and often fails to portray the victim's perspective.
Oh great, looks like we're gonna see more TV shows taking flashback notes from Naruto.
This, says Dr. Howard Bell, can cause us to gloss over its consequences and check out. Instead of viewing violent acts as an outrage, we blindly accept them as a fact of life. They are facts of life. It is a part of a human nature that we become violent towards certain things. What are you even... Indeed, research on media representations of violence against women and their children conducted by Australia's National Research Organisation for Women's Safety last year found that the media acts in a myriad of ways to perpetuate ambiguity and ambivalence concerning the definition, the dynamics and the harms of family violence and sexual assault.
Hey, Australia, how about you stop giving a fuck about how fictional women are treated and start talking about actual violence towards real-life women? I mean, I appreciate your attempts on making the world a better place, but this is basically saying, we have nothing else to do, so we're gonna attack your female characters too. My waifus don't need your kinds of protection, okay?
In other words, the ways in which violence is represented on our screens can numb us to the devastation violence against women can cause.
Yes, because I watched way too much anime with women beating up. Therefore, when my sister got injured after being chased out by a stalker, I would say, hey, bitch, how about you man up and deal with it? I've seen animes where the girls got their heads chopped off. Your pain is not special. No, of course I wouldn't say that. If that thing happens, I would be horrified to life. I'm not that mentally demented. I don't have an Ikari syndrome. But apparently some stupid organization in Australia has people who hold this cancerous disease, or at least people who think that most people have this sort of bizarre, demented mindset.
Watching violence can affect your mood.
You mean violence in entertainment media? Oh, please do tell me more.
But the effects of consuming violence can be subtle too. One of the most insidious effects of such negative material is that it affects the viewer's mood, often without them being aware of it, says Graham Davey, Emeritus Professor of Psychology at the University of Sussex.
Oh, I am aware. I am so aware. I am so woke.
Our near constant engagement with violent content in our entertainment, he adds, can heighten the individual's own personal worries and concerns, making people worry more about the events in their own personal lives.
I'm sorry, what? Are you saying that violence in entertainment made me worry that the same thing is gonna happen to me? Are we talking about TV shows or freaking Friday the 13th?
What's more, watching women being harmed at the hands of men on screen is not fiction, it is reality.
That is gonna be the funniest thing that I've ever read in a while. That should be the title of the video. This kind of claim is so ridiculous. I don't... Oh my god. God help me. This video is going to kill me.
As research by the Victorian government shows, violence is the biggest contributor to ill health and premature death in women aged 15 to 44.
So, what you're saying here is violence towards women in fiction doesn't just happen in fiction, it also happens in reality. First of all, thank you, Captain Obvious. And second of all, did you just equate the impact of women being murdered in fiction with women being murdered in real life? Even if you think that they are both the same, they do not have the same impact. I cannot feel sorry towards some random chick who got assaulted and possessed by demons in Doom. I can feel sorry towards my friend's mother who died in real life. If you cannot distinct between the two, if you cannot just differentiate that both realms have different sorts of impact, Ikari Syndrome much?
And according to the Counting Dead Women Project, an initiative of the feminists destroyed the joint Facebook community, 71 women were killed last year as a result of violence. It is a threat that looms over women's everyday lives.
So, women died in real life, therefore, fictional women getting killed is about as equally bad, and they should be banned. I don't... Someone please help me, this video is going to kill me.
Is violence against women in film ever okay?
Yes, the same way violence against men and fictional monsters are always okay. While we're at it, we should also advocate for the senseless violence that these Hellspawns suffered, preferably in the style of Wall Street Journal.
Importantly, however, television can be a highly effective medium for helping audiences understand the impact of violence against women, says Dr. Hereward Bell, so long as stories emphasize the victim's perspective. Who experiences the violence? What do they feel, hear, see? How do they deal with the aftermath?
Oh, so violence against women on TV is not okay because they don't explain it very well, as if violence needs some form of explanation. Lady, have you ever heard of show don't tell? If someone gets beat up on TV, it would be much better if you don't tell how you got beat up, how you feel, and what it feels like to be beaten up. It would be better to just show their emotions, show their faces, show their reactions, show their screams, their pain, their suffering. Oh, sorry, that's too graphic for you apparently.
A near-perfect example of this can be found in Season 2 of Netflix's House of Cards, which focuses on Claire Underwood's experience of being raped in college. When Claire tells her husband Frank what it felt like to be raped, the camera does not move from her face.
So, you're telling me that one way for us to empathize with women in fiction is to have them talk about their story. Well, there's nothing wrong with that. You can just tell the story through dialogues, that's fine. This doesn't mean that showing the actual rape isn't wrong. This doesn't mean that you can just tell the story. Most of the time, stories need to be shown. There are some that can be told, but if you want to make a story about the Batgirls, for example, and only consists of Batgirls sitting down and telling their story of how they beat up criminals, it wouldn't be a good show, would it?
She's able to tell her story in her own words, and we are able to empathize with her, to see the impact of her experience, not only in that scene, but throughout the entire season.
Yes, you are able to empathize with her through her telling the story. You can also empathize with women who are shown to be beaten up senselessly on the story instead of told. Oh, wait, you also said that women getting beat up desensitizes people on violence against women. Look, just because you quote a few psychologists doesn't make your claim to be true. Women getting beat up in fiction does not make us think that women getting beat up in real life is therefore okay.
As soon as I stopped watching violence against women in my entertainment, I started feeling safer as a woman in the world.
Well, at least you're honest that it was you who feels safe and not, well, projecting it to everybody. I mean, Jesus, man, get a grip.
Without scenes of women's abductions playing out in front of me, I became more confident walking alone at night. With no women being raped or murdered on my TV, I no longer imagined the myriad ways my friends could meet their grisly end at the hands of a man.
You know, some of my commenters tell me that the Ikari syndrome isn't the problem. It's that people are just paranoid. The moment they see something even as triggering as fiction, they got so paranoid that they believe that this fictional material is gonna affect them in real life as well. Ma'am, you are paranoid. You need help. Roll that Michael Jordan clip.
Stop it. Get some help.
In this way, actively choosing which stories I allow into my head has made me feel more powerful.
A giant chicken. I must be the luckiest girl in the world.
And so, I won't be watching Game of Thrones this season, but I will be lifting my ban to include shows that deal with violence against women thoughtfully and respectfully.
And by 2020, my daily TV consumption would consist of Saturday morning cartoons made for kindergartens.
What are you kids doing here? School's over. Go home, you sillies.
No, thanks.
In making this choice, I am no longer at the mercy of television shows that seem determined to make women like me nothing but pieces of flesh to be destroyed.
Congratulations, ma'am. You just figured out that fictional characters are objects that anybody can do anything towards, no matter how sick and despicable they are. Good lord, this article is amazing. It not only makes some disgusting implications of how human empathy works, but also suffers from a severe case of paranoia and the inability to distinguish between the impact of fiction and reality. One article down, thousands more in the future to go. Before we end this video, huge thanks to the pledge on Patreon, Valve. You are marvelous.